Hello, my name is Kathy and I live in Great Yarmouth, and today I'd like to talk about this house and some deeds that belong to this house that was built in the 1800s. So this is the deed that I want to talk about. It's dated the 23rd of October 1879, as you can see in that corner. And any solicitor who was acting on this property, if their client asked them what this document is about, they would say it's an indenture that was put together because the property, or the land I should say, was being sold at a low value, and so the corporation selling it was wanting an annual rent, and so an annual rent charge was registered against the property, and that's since been removed, so it's not relevant to this particular transaction. So, and that is exactly what my friend was told when she purchased the property in 2014. So the reason that a solicitor would say this is not because you know, they're lying or anything like that, although having looked at this document in detail, that's not quite what it says. But it's not that they're lying, it's just that lawyers are taught to skim read these documents for relevance in the current situation, because their main criteria is to make sure that the transaction is safe and sound for their client. And so you're not going to sit and read it word for word, because you're not taught to do that, even though you do that in the exams and so on, but then the documents that you're given are pretty straightforward. So really a solicitor is just looking for, is the person selling the property, do they have a right to sell it? Are there any charges, burdens, covenants, restrictions registered against the property, you know, anything that the client needs to know, or anything that needs to be removed because it's no longer relevant because it's historic? Is the extent of the property clearly marked on the attached plan? Is there a clear and free access to the property? And then once all of that's been dealt with, it gets registered at Land Registry and the old deeds get destroyed, and that's what happens to them. This is why, you know, you can't find loads of deeds and documents dating back to who owned it before that and who owned it before that. It's just not going to exist, because a solicitor is, one, not going to want to send all of those bulky documents to their client because of the cost of postage over a period of time, nor do they want to hold on to them because these are irrelevant. Since Land Registry became compulsory in 1991, and I mean they were being registered way before that, but it was compulsory in 1991 to register all new transactions, no deeds and documents really get saved, bar for the odd extracts of documents that are still relevant to the property, as this one was for a short period of time, because it was needed to be able to remove the charge that was still on the property, even though the charge hadn't been collected for a long time. Now all of this, I know I'm rattling on, but I'm just trying to make the point that this is how solicitors think. They're not going out of their way to lie, and this I know because that's what I did for a number of years. I was a property lawyer. I'm not now a property lawyer because I took up a different career, and that other career is current, so you know, I don't need to go into details with that, but I just want you to know that I do understand deeds and documents, and understand how I personally have been misreading them for many years, and I know that other solicitors are doing exactly the same because it's not relevant information. But if we have a look closely, it's become very relevant to me now, because what this is actually saying is, whereas I would have mistaken this as being, because it's Her Majesty's Treasury and it's the Mayor, Alderman, so on, which is the corporation, and they are selling this to Benjamin Springle, who's specifically named as a builder. So I would have said, well, this is just virgin land owned by the Crown, and that's being sent to sold to a builder, and so he's going to build the properties. So the properties haven't been built yet at this moment in time in 1879. However, it's not virgin land, and this I now know because the corporation in this section here are going into detail about how they became entitled to the pieces of ground and hoards being the value that's involved. So how did they come to be entitled to it if it isn't as straightforward as it having been owned by the Crown, and the Crown was giving permission for the corporation to sell it? Well, they made an application which had been placed by the town clerk of the said borough on the door of the town hall, and basically that application and a copy of a memorandum of such application having been freely open at the town clerk office of the said borough for the inspection of burgesses thereof at all reasonable hours during such calendar months that the Lord Commissioners of Her Majesty's Treasury had approved. So basically Her Majesty's Treasury was saying, yep, you know, just slap a notice up so that we're going to go through the motions of, we know that the land isn't ours, we know that it's belonging to someone else, but what we'll do is we'll go through the motions of if anyone has a claim to it, they need to come forward. And it's no different really to today. If a mortgage company is going to repossess a property, they have to give notice, and they'll slap a notice on the front door of the property for a period of time, and they will also put a small ad in the local paper to give notice, so that anybody who has a claim over it and feels that they're owed something from that land, they have an opportunity to come forward and show the paperwork to validate their claim. Why, if this was virgin land, which would have therefore been owned by the Crown, would they be putting a notice out asking, does anybody want to come forward and claim this land? They wouldn't, basically. That isn't what would happen. So clearly the land was known to belong to someone else. That's why they had to go through this application process. So we go on, and now they're selling it anyway, so they've said how they came by it, they've acquired it, and they're being backed by Her Majesty's Treasury in the sale of it. So it's on a new road because the road is yet to be named. It goes on about the numbers of the plots of land on the map of estates of the corporation made in 1861. So a plan is attached here setting out the boundary of the pieces of land that our builder Benjamin is buying, and he's buying 6 pieces of this land. So let's have a look at the plan. So these are the 6 pieces shaded in red that Benjamin is buying, and you can see the plot numbers are there. The houses aren't named because the houses aren't built apparently, and yet all the roads have been laid. So since when do you know of a situation where all the roads have been laid before the properties are built? Equally, I would point out that this is supposedly a map of estates from 1861. It's now 1879, and yet in 1861 they already knew that these houses were all going to have bay windows because they've marked them in. Also, would our builder be stupid enough to be buying a plot of land here knowing that these are all terrace houses and therefore these are party walls, because now he can't build that until he's got these 2 owners of land their permission to get onto that bit of land to build this. And you can't possibly build a party wall in a terrace house without building the building next door to it. So there is just no way that this can have any other explanation than the buildings were already there. It's the only explanation for all of that. So, if we look back at this, so he's buying his 6 pieces of ground, and it's now stipulating in this document that on each piece of ground there should be 1 messuage, which is a building or dwelling house, with brick or cement fronts and slate roofs. And it's to be erected, as aforesaid, with respect to their respective situations, range of line, form and elevation. Now think about what that says. It says that he has got to erect the houses with respect to their respective situations. Now, how can a virgin plot of land have a respective situation if there's no property on it? So he's erecting it respective to what situation, what range of line, what form and what possible elevation can there be on nothing on the land? So this is clearly telling you that something is on there, and the something that's already built there, when the property is erected, you have to take into respect the situation of what's there already, the range of line of what's there already, the form and elevation of what's there already. Then goes on to say that a further plan and elevation need to be submitted by the grantee, which is our builder, to the Burgesses for their approval. So basically he's got to take a look at what's there already and then develop a plan to show what he intends to do further to it, and then send it off for their approval. So it also goes on to say that would at the time of erecting said dwelling houses form and make walls before the fronts of the said pieces of ground. See, it's again referring to it as ground, and we already know that it has a building on it. And now so he's got a plot of ground, and what he's got to do is build a wall in front of the plot of ground of the width of 6 feet, and then he's got to enclose the area with dwarf walls of 9 inches white brick with stone coving and iron palisades, and that the same should be of such materials, patterns, manner and construction as should be approved by the surveyor of the mayor alderman. So again, he's got to put a planning permission in, but they're telling him what it needs to look like at the front and what he needs to do to the front of the building. And just to show you what they're talking about, they're telling him to build this wall at the front. So before he builds this, he's got to build that. And yet we've already seen that the road is already there. So there is nothing in this document that specifies how deep that wall has to be. There's nothing in it that even suggests there's going to be a basement level, which is a little bit like, I guess, if I get a decorator to decorate my bedroom and I tell him what I want my bed to look like. It's not the information that he needs to be decorating the room. And this is the 9-inch dwarf wall and the palisades. See, this wall and this dwarf wall isn't really relevant to the builder, who needs to know what he's got to do to construct this house. It's crazy. The house was already there. That's why. What they're telling him to do, without specifying it very bluntly in the documents, they're telling him to dig it out. Dig it out and build the wall. And then build up from there. So it goes on here, the areas with red brick walls have to be of such height not less than 7 feet. And if you can see that there, because I didn't actually highlight this bit, but if you read along there, that's what that says about the red brick walls of such height no less than 7 feet from the ground line. The ground line being the street, so it needs to be up 7 feet at least from the street. So they're telling him to make sure he builds upwards. But what red brick walls are we talking about? So it can only be the red brick walls of the building that he's just dug out. So there is absolutely no question in my mind that not only was there definitely a house there and a row of houses there, but this document goes out of its way to not say that and to imply that this is a new build. And I'm absolutely blown away by this, because I've probably had in my hands thousands of documents over the years that could have proved this, and this is the first time that I'm properly looking and seeing what it's actually saying. So nowhere in the document does it mention that the fronts need to incorporate bay windows. It just doesn't mention it. Now, if you're that fussy about what the front is going to look like, and you know, it needs to be 9-inch dwarf wall and it needs to have balustrades on it, then you would mention that you want the bay windows. It doesn't mention anywhere in the document that there needs to be a basement level. It doesn't specify the depth of footings that are required. It doesn't specify a limit to the height. It doesn't say that the property needs to facilitate any water or sewage connections, despite the fact that both of those were available to accommodations in Yarmouth at that time. And I have looked at this particular building that's associated with the deeds, and I can see that sewage connections were incorporated into the building, but you would think that that would be one of the main things that needs to be mentioned in the original documents. So as I said, this document is deliberately implying a new build whilst demonstrating categorically the reconstruction of an existing building. And that's why this extract right at the top in the corner, and these little corner extracts are really because when, you know, in olden times before everything was electronic, you'd just have masses of paper and you could thumb through the papers and you could easily identify the paper that you were looking for. So this says Mr. Benjamin Springle for a piece of ground and messuage. And messuage. It wasn't just ground he was buying, it was ground and a building. So this home was acquired by the corporation, but I want you to note the plot numbers on just this page run up to 2021. So 2000. Actually, no, it's more than that. I've actually got the figure wrong now. I'm looking. It's 2112, 2113, and so on. So it's 2121 this goes up to. So you can imagine how many homes have been acquired by the corporation, and you have to wonder, where were all the people that owned these? What's happened to the people? And I've got a bad feeling. I suspect I know the likely fate of the original owners of that land and those properties. But these deeds back up what was discovered in the 2 houses that we investigated. The level below the floorboards grades downwards towards the basement, and by that, for anyone who hasn't watched my previous videos, this is the front of the house and it's very shallow, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper all the way down to the basement at the back, because they were redesigning houses and they were refronting them. And there is no question in my mind now, and I think the deeds are absolute evidence. I'm going to leave my email in the link section, so that anyone who has old deeds and documents, if you want me to take a look at them and see whether there's further evidence, I'm more than happy to do so. So this house that the deeds relate to had the entire original ground level saved, and I believe this was dug out. This is under the steps, so this is how they've arched it and supported it against the wall, and that is why this wall is stipulated as one of the first things that needed to be built before this house was being restructured. It was a support, and that support runs under these steps that lead up to this doorway, and that doorway would have been recreated, and you can see it's all been elaborately refronted. And I think a lot of properties in Great Yarmouth show that they've clearly been restructured at the front, and the fronts are very elaborate, like this one, and then look at the back of it. I mean, there's no way that was built like that, but I bet you anything you like, if I went and looked up that property, it would tell me that it was all built like that in the first place, and it would give me some anomalous date in the 1800s. And that goes back to the video I made of the jailhouse, or the toll house, sorry, the jail, when I was talking about the square windows and the arch windows, and it was going backwards and forwards because they've restructured it and they've not quite got the dates right. So online the dates are going backwards and forwards, and there's a lot of silliness. But a very, very observant subscriber, Claire Billing, pointed out that the arches in the Toll House jail were probably taken from a much older building, such as the Greyfriars, which just happens to be around the corner from the Toll House, and it just so happens to be missing the stonework arches. Isn't that a coincidence? So thank you, Claire, for spotting that. And while we're on the subject, I'd also like to thank another subscriber, Escape the Prison, for and that's a fantastic name, for sending links showing the partially built channel tunnel created in the 1800s, and that was in reference to my video on the mystery markings of the Great Yarmouth map. But wow, look at that tunnel, and that kind of really is what I had in mind when I was saying I think that the map is showing tunnels that go out under the sea. And like the ones that I showed on that map, this is only partially built apparently, but I do wonder whether you could go down here and find that it actually interlinks to something else if you had a good look around, but I'm sure you wouldn't be allowed to go under there. But crazily enough, I found this, and this is supposedly what they had in mind when they were putting this together. I just thought that that was really quite funny, that sketch of a horse-drawn carriage going under the sea. Yeah, right. Anyway, I'd like to thank everyone who subscribed, and all the encouraging comments and all the really, really well thought through ideas. I'm sure that together we are going to pull this off, and we're going to work out what happened, and then we will work out when. And I think today's dates of that map that was mapping the different plots of land in 1861 might turn out to be a really good clue. Anyway, I have got a lot of commitments leading up to Christmas, and so I probably won't be back until the new year, and I'd just like to wish everyone, so anyone that does celebrate